Welcome back. As I mentioned, we have Becky LaMacca here with O'Connor Mortuary. Hi again.
Hi, happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. And, you know, we've talked to you many times before regarding both sides of what you guys do with Pacific Cremation and O'Connor Mortuary. And always a, you know, enlightening yet somewhat sad subject because we are dealing with loss. But something that you wanted to address today is loss, and not necessarily a death loss, but other types of losses. And you know, you deal with grief all the time, so I'm imagining that you can help us.
Yes, yes. And I don't know, there's a time in our lifetimes that we've experienced more non-death losses than over the last 18 months.
Right.
And you know, I think when we think about grief, I mean, we do grieve, even if it isn't a death loss. And so many of us have experienced that, not being able to see family, not being able to do certain things that we were used to doing. I was noticing, you know, even closures of different events. You know, maybe we always went to, you know, this certain park or this certain vacation every year, and then all of a sudden you can't do that, and we do grieve. The one thing I know that all of us who have experienced grief understand, though, is grief is transformational, right? It's not easy, but it is transformational. And it's been so interesting as our world has started to open up again, hearing people talk about their losses that they've experienced, yet finding parts of these past 18 months that have been good for them too, and they've come out the other side of this maybe a little stronger or changed in some way for the better.
You know, when you said that there are losses and maybe there's certain things that they had to look forward to each year, or they were looking forward to each year, how about the people who couldn't go through graduation ceremonies or even get married?
Yes.
I mean, there were so many of those milestones that people were not able to participate in. So you combat that with possibly a death. I mean, my goodness, it must seem like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So in your line of business, even though you're not necessarily a psychologist, how do you deal with those folks who may have multiple kinds of losses?
Well, we have an entire community of support for people, and that's one of the things that we do at O'Connor. Is it doesn't end when the person dies and they come in and they maybe have the celebration of life or the funeral service or the memorial. We're there to help people through and beyond that. So we do have resources available. We have wonderful therapists that are in the community that we can help people with. We partner with the hospitals, with the faith communities, with the hospices to offer grief support groups for individuals. The good news is most of us do okay with our grief support group, maybe some reading. Most of us, we learn how to integrate that loss into our lives. Do we still grieve? Are we still sad? Do we have moments that all of a sudden in a snap something will bring a memory back to us and we're tearing up? Absolutely. Yet do we find a way to move forward in our grief? Absolutely we do.
You know, do you think that age is related to that? I mean, I guess I'm comparing, you know, maybe somebody who might be in their 30s or 40s versus somebody who might be in their 80s or 90s. You know, how do they deal with losses differently?
Well, I think the older we get, we have experienced more loss in our lives, and maybe not always a death loss, yet we have experienced loss in our lives. That being said, though, grief is so individual that it's more about the person than the stage of life or the type of death. You know, it's interesting to talk with families who have a specific type of loss, and you would think, oh, this would be much more tragic than the other. And yet, again, it's very individualized with how people move through their grief. So
when you say transformational, what is your definition of transformational?
It changes us. It changes us. Think of some of the most worthy causes that we support have come out of a tragedy, have come out of a death. I think Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. That grief of the mom who founded that organization was transformational for her.
Okay.
Was it painful? Was it horrible? Does she not wish that on anybody? She does not. Yet what she did is she took that grief and she said, I'm going to help the next person. So transformational, and it doesn't have to be something that is as grand as maybe an organization coming out of a death loss. Yet there are little things that we can see in our lives, maybe taking that character quality of that person that we loved so much and carrying that on in our lives. So that transformation that we carry on in spite of the grief.
Right. Well, that is very important to remember, I think. Like you said, maybe there's something you can carry on. You talk about meaning making. So what does meaning making mean?
Meaning making is, how do I make sense of this? And I think when people want to go and talk with somebody, maybe the wonderful social services department that we have here in Laguna Woods Village, and they want to talk through some of these losses, they want to talk through maybe some of the grief or the anxiety they've experienced over that last 18 months, sometimes they want people to give them all the answers. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. Meaning making means, how do I make sense of this for my own self? And how do I take this loss and how do I integrate it so that I can get out of bed in the morning, so that I can go back socializing with my friends, so I can go back to my church or my faith community?
Right.
How do I make sense of it for me? And how do I make sense of it for the person who has died?
Okay. Well, you never would know. I mean, before I met you and started talking to you, I never really thought about any of this. And so I'm glad that you're able to come on and help us kind of think about these things, because even if we haven't had a loss, there's lots of other things that we could certainly apply what you're mentioning. So I appreciate you coming on.
It's always great to be here.
All right, Becky, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. And remember, if you are experiencing any kind of loss, you can always get in contact with O'Connor Mortuary, and they will be able to help you connect with any resources or give you the information. We'll be right back.